Welcome to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is May 19th, May 16th, 2024. And tonight we have a very special guest speaker, Chris Bergier. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Chris Bergier. I grew up in Lunenburg, Massachusetts. I graduated from high school. I was one of the first Eagle Scouts in Troop 1728. I built a 90-foot long bridge across the Henry Cowdery Nature Center for my Eagle Scout project. I used to work aboard commercial fishing boats. I spent a year and a half of my life out at sea, working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, until the boat was full, both on the Northeast and Alaska. In high school, my favorite subjects were, calculus and physics, and I loved engineering. Well, so I got accepted to Boston University, graduated in 1994 from BU. I was out fishing in Alaska for a couple of years too, so I took a 2-year leave of absence. So it took me 6 years to get my degree. I worked for companies in North Carolina, animal byproducts processing industry, and then heavy equipment manufacturing, and also, well, my degree at Boston University is aerospace engineering. So I feel that I'm pretty qualified to be a 9/11 researcher. And then also I worked for a structural steel fabricator for several years. So I know a lot about steel design, steel connections, and the ins and outs of the whole structural that goes into a building. I first became interested in the 9/11 Truth movement. I was a big follower of Liam Sheff, and I really knew that AIDS was a hoax. And then I read his book, Official Stories, and I still wasn't 100% with him on the 9/11 stuff until I debated my nephew. And I said, look, 9/11 can't possibly be an inside job. I'll prove it to you. I'll really research it. And the more I researched it, the more I realized he was right. So he won the bet. And then I started doing research, and I first signed up for AE 9/11 Truth as a member there. And then one time on one radio network, I remember listening to this lady. She said, "Oh, they use advanced Star Trek technology to bring down the towers." This is before I was a truther. I'm thinking, what a nut job to believe something like that. Star Trek technology to bring down. Boy, she really got her information wrong. Now that I realize I think she made some good points. I first came across Dr. Wood's presentation on one radio network, Patrick Tamponi, and ever since I watched Dr. Judy Wood's, I think, a 2012 conference in the breakthrough energy movement in Holland. When I watched that 2.5-hour presentation, my whole world changed, and then I really became a truther trying to figure all these questions. So I came to the 9/11 Truth Movement in Boston in 2013, more as a researcher. I didn't really know anything about activism, but I started to enjoy the activism and interacting with the group. I was kind of shy as a group speaker, so I thought this would be good for me to learn these skills. So right now, so I'm a big proponent of Dr. Judy Wood's book. This is the book right here. Where did the towers go? I don't know if it blurs it out, or you can kind of see it there. Where did the towers go? And one of the main points of her conclusions of her research is that the process that brought down the towers was neither thermal nor kinetic. And I could show you some examples of say what let me do a share screen right here. Let me do a share screen, and I can show you guys an example of what a kinetic explosion is. So I'm going to show it. I'm going to share this with you guys right now, and then I'm going to turn it down a little bit while the ad plays.
Get all of this.
They have a Kashava ad here. takes a couple of minutes. Maybe I could skip. There you go. Skip. Okay, so let's watch this short video here.
Had a whale of a problem on its hands. It had a stinking whale of a problem. What to do with one 45-foot, 8-ton whale dead on arrival, the beach near Florence. It had been so long since a whale had washed up in Lane County, nobody could remember how to get rid of one. In selecting its battle plan, the Highway Division decided the carcass couldn't be buried because it might soon be uncovered. It couldn't be cut up and then buried because nobody wanted to cut it up, and it couldn't be burned. So dynamite it was, some 20 cases or a half ton of it. The hope was that the long-dead Pacific gray whale would be almost disintegrated by the blast, and that any small pieces still around after the explosion would be taken care of by seagulls and other scavengers. Indeed, the seagulls had been standing nearby all day. As everything was being made ready, we asked George Thornton, the highway engineer in charge of the project, for his final observation.
Well, I'm confident that it'll work. The only thing is, we're not sure just exactly how much explosives it'll take to disintegrate this thing, so the scavengers, seagulls and crabs and whatnot can clean it up.
Is there any chance it might be more than a one-day job?
If there's any large chunks left, and we may have to do some other cleanup, possibly set another charge.
The dynamite was buried primarily on the leeward side of the big mammal, so as most of the remains would be blown toward the sea. About 75 bystanders, most of them residents who had first found the whale to be an object of curiosity before they tired of its smell, were moved back a quarter of a mile away. The sand dunes there were covered with spectators and landlubber newsmen, shortly to become land blubber newsmen, for the blast blasted blubber beyond all believable bounds.
Yeah, okay. Well, so that's a can you guys can hear me now, right?
No, you need to continue playing that so you can see all the whale blubber going everywhere.
Oh, okay. Okay, hold on. I'll play it a little bit more. You guys can still see it? Okay.
Our camera stopped rolling immediately after the blast.
You're not sharing, are you?
Am I sharing or?
Huge chunks of whale blubber fell out.
Hold on. Let me screen share again. Hold on. Okay, here it goes.
The camera stopped rolling immediately after the blast. The humor of the entire situation suddenly gave way to a run for survival as huge chunks of whale blubber fell everywhere. Pieces of meat passed high over our heads while others were falling at our feet. The dunes were rapidly evacuated as spectators escaped both the falling debris and the overwhelming smell. A car over a quarter of a mile from the blast site was the target of one large chunk. The passenger compartment literally smashed. Fortunately, no human was hit as badly as the car. However, everyone on the scene was covered with small particles of dead whale. As for the success of the effort, the seagulls who were supposed to clean things up were nowhere in sight, either scared away by the explosion or kept away by the smell. That didn't really matter. The remaining chunks were of such a size that no respectable seagull would attempt to tackle anyway. As darkness began to set in, the highway crews were back on the beach burying the remains, including a large piece of the carcass which never left the blast site. It might be concluded.
That's enough. I think that's
okay. Okay, so yeah, so I thought I'd share that with you guys. So that's what a half-ton TNT does to a 8-ton whale. So that's a kinetic explosion using TNT, and in TNT, the velocity of the exploding gases is about 6,000 meters per second. So just keep that in mind. Then we have something called a thermal process of demolishing a piece of structure, and I'll show you that real quick here. Hold on, just a second here. So let me do, hold on here. Skip ad. What do I have? Okay, screen share. Share, there's the ad. Share. Now, play that. Skip. Okay.
Cascading.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, it's coming out the windows. It's definitely gotten into the cab.
Burning thermite is 3 times hotter than molten lava, and the UV rays are so intense you can't view it up close without a welder's mask. No wonder Jamie thought this might be better than a bang.
Oh, there it is. The river's running down.
Yeah, you can see it dripping off
Yeah,
the front of the car.
exactly. Oh, that's great.
As the fire peaks, then sputters, it looks like the thermite strip hasn't quite cleaved the roof.
Looks like it's petering out.
JD decides it's safe enough to venture forth.
Well, it didn't really cleanly cut it right down the middle like I was hoping. There's not going to be a whole lot left of that car.
But rending the roof wasn't the main aim. They just want to know one thing.
Was this better than a bang? I'm sort of biased toward.
Okay. So yeah. So that's what thermite would do to a car. If you notice all the light, smoke, and fire coming from that. Okay. So another piece of information I want to give you here. Let's watch this short video here. This is right from AE 911 Truth, talking about thermite. So I'm going to pull this up here. You guys can watch this real quick.
You need to share again.
Hold on. Share screen. Share. Okay.
Out of the ashes of the World Trade Center devastation rises the Freedom Tower, whose foundation, however, is shrouded in question. For example, in the World Trade Center dust, an international team of scientists find an advanced form of highly energetic nanothermite composites. What is it, and where does it come from?
In the dust, we found what we characterize as unreacted thermitic material in the shape of some very tiny red-gray chips. And in the reaction, they produce molten iron, which is the prime indication of a thermitic reaction. And such a reaction can be used to destroy steel structures. What we have found is a modern version of thermite, which we call nanothermite, which is produced in a different way. It's not just 2 powders being mixed. The material is actually built from the atom scale up. We call it the bottom-up procedure, which is what you do in nanotechnology. The ingredients are much smaller, which means they're reacting faster and they're more easily ignited.
The primary elements in the red material are aluminum, iron oxide, as well as silicon and carbon. The iron oxide appears in faceted grains, approximately 100 nanometers across. The aluminum appears in thin platelets, about 40 nanometers thick. In ordinary thermite, the particle size is much larger, and hence ordinary thermite is an incendiary. Whereas as the particle size becomes smaller and smaller, superthermite is sometimes called. This red material contains also a significant amount of carbon, and the formulation of nanothermite as described by National Laboratory Publications also implies the presence of carbon.
Oh, okay, so yeah, I'm gonna stop the presentation right there. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so right here, the screen says nanothermite composite leads to a fast propagating combustion, generating shock waves with Mach numbers up to 3. Okay, so I absolutely agree with that thermite can produce a shock wave blast up to a Mach number of 3. Now there was a researcher who came along in the truth movement that I'm not sure if you guys know who he is, but his name is Mark T. Hightower, and he said he questioned the ability of nanothermite to produce a shockwave blast up to 2,000 meters per second. So his presentation, I'm gonna pull it up here. Just a second. So I'm gonna stop screen share, and then I'm gonna start screen share. His presentation's right here, and he says high explosive nanothermite, more bark than bite, no contenders for the nanothermite challenge. And he was on The Real Deal with Jim Fetzer, and I can play some of the audio of that here shortly. But anyways, he goes on to these notes to listeners. Listeners should have been directed to this webpage to view and download. He may not have these sites up and running, but I can send this out to everybody. And then he talks about the article by Stephen Jones. Next page. So Mark T. Hightower has both BS and MS degrees in chemical engineering, has nearly 30 years of engineering experience. He has worked in the chemical industry, the space program, for the last 2 years in the environmental field. He is a member of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, American Institute of Aeronautics, Astronautics, and ASTM. He became a born-again conspiracy theorist on January 2004 after stumbling upon Peter Meyer's Serendipity website, learned that controlled demolition was more likely explanation for the destruction of the Twin Towers than the official story. He is a member of Scholars for 9/11 Truth and petition signer of AE 9/11 Truth and a member of Pilots. His 9/11 research is done as an exercise for his constitutional rights as a private citizen, and in no way represents his employer or the professional societies which he holds membership. He prefers not to mention his employer in the context of his research in order to avoid any appearance of representing his employee in these matters. So here's kind of some brief chronologically. I don't really have to go into this here. We'll skip over this. And then he says, why the nanothermite challenge? He says, in April 2009, the paper Active Thermite Material Discovered in Dust from the World Trade Center by Herrick came out. The author was not able to definitely conclude that what they found was an explosive. So they said they found the red layer, the red gray ships, to be highly energetic, pyrotechnic, or explosive material. April 2009, A Truth released article, groundbreaking scientific paper confirmed this week that red gray flakes found in the multiple samples of WTC dust were actually unexploded fragments of nanothermite, an exotic high-tech explosive. Same article says ordinary thermite burns quickly and can melt through steel, but it's not explosive. Nanothermite, however, can be formulated to be a high explosive. So that's just kind of the definition of a pyrotechnic here. I'll just skip over that. And so he gives a nanothermite challenge to everybody. He says, find and document a peer-reviewed scientific research that demonstrates that a gas-generating nanothermite based upon iron oxide and aluminum, where the gas-generating chemical added to the nanothermite is not itself high explosive, can be made to be high explosive with at least a detonation velocity of 2,000 meters per second. The author of this paper will donate $100 for every 1,000 meters per second of detonation velocity that can be documented. The donation not to exceed 1,000.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
In an earlier slide, you were talking about how they were bragging that the super duper nanothermite could go a Mach number 3.
Yes.
Do you know what that is in meters
Well,
per second?
yeah, let me talk about, oh, yep, you're kind of jumping the gun here.
No, well, I just wanted to
Yeah,
have a
I will.
comparison.
Yep, I will. I'm going to talk about that. Yeah. So if you, yeah, and try to say, yeah, I'll talk about that. But if you guys could try to say the questions till afterwards, because I'll probably answer your question. But anyways, this is what Wikipedia says. It says low explosive are compounds where the rates of decomposition proceeds through the material at least the speed of sound. The decomposition is propagated by flame front deflagration, which travels much more slowly through the explosive material than a shock wave of a high explosive. Under normal conditions, low explosive undergo deflagration at rates that vary from a few centimeters per second to approximately 40 meters per second. It is possible for them to deflagrate very quickly, producing an effective similar to a detonation. This can happen under high pressure or temperature, which usually occurs when ignited in a confined space. Low explosive, usually a mixture of combustible substance and oxidant that decompose rapidly, however, they burn slower than high explosives, which have an extremely fast burn rate. Low explosives are normally employed as propellants, including the group gunpowder, light pyrotechnics, flares, and fireworks. Now high explosives are explosive materials that detonate, meaning that the explosive shock front passes through the material at a supersonic speed. High explosive detonation with explosive velocity rates ranging from 3,000 to 900 meters per second. So the speed of sound is approximately 343, or let's say 340 meters per second. So AE 911 Truth concludes that thermite has a detonation velocity of a little over 1,000 meters per second. Okay, and that's very important that we point that out. So further comments on high versus low explosive. Technically, the difference between low and high explosive is whether its reaction velocity is less than or greater than the speed of sound in the explosive material. So the speed of sound is different materials. So air is 343, water 1,497. Now steel 6,010. Okay, and then aluminum is 6,420. Concrete 3,200 to 3,600. That means if nanothermite was designed to pulverize concrete, it would have to have an explosive velocity in the medium of over 3,000 meters per second. So what Mark T. Hightower found is that when he looked at all the literature, that he was
Sorry,
only.
I wanted to go back. Where was the source for these?
Oh, yeah. He lists a lot of sources. Let's go back here. Okay, I'll just continue. Okay, so this helps to explain how in the previous definition there is the region between 400 meters per second and 3,000 meters per second that is undefined, up for grabs whether it is a low or high explosive. But really, this will not be a problem. In the nanothermite challenge, I use 2,000 meters per second as my lowest value at which the prize would be awarded. This was a judgment call on my part, he says. Then reaction velocities for nanothermite from the technical literature. When I wrote my May 1st paper, the velocities that I could find documented in the open technical literature for iron oxide aluminum nanothermite were 8.8 meters per second. This is aluminum nanothermite, 8.8 meters per second. So that's nowhere near 6,000 meters per second. And 40.5 meters per second for tungsten oxide, aluminum nanothermite, 7.3. As I have also been trying to meet the nanothermite challenge myself, I've since found a higher value in the literature for iron oxide aluminum nanothermite, 895 meters per second. And this is described as sol gel aerosol. And then he references this Clapton Thomas chemistry high energy material. So the most that he was able to find, the highest detonation velocity for nanothermite, 895 meters per second. And then he said, it will be shown that an explosive velocity of 895 meters per second is inadequate to make explosive nanothermite of any significance as an explosive for the destruction of the WTC buildings. Okay. And then he talks something on soul gel. The cliptic text on page 195 says the following about this aerogel nanothermite. The impact sensitivity of the aerogel thermite may make it suitable for use in primers because all the other proprietary methods of iron oxide thermite produce thermite as unsuitable for this application. Especially sensitive nature of the aerogel thermite stems from the inability of the aerogel matrix to conduct heat, a character only applicable to aerogels due to their insulating abilities. Does nanothermite have an impact sensitivity issue, and how might this affect theories of WTC destruction? So, you know, and here's just it shows you right here where the 895 meters per second is on this. This is like a log graph, and that the normal range of high explosives are much further to the right. So the normal high explosives are in this table right here. Okay, so if you look at TNT, that's 6,900 meters per second. So that's how fast, when we saw that exploding whale, you see all the copious gases explode off the whale. Okay, and then there's other materials called RDX, and that's 8,750. So that RDX is like shape charges that the military uses to you know, bring down bridges and stuff. So I just thought I'd start off with that. I mean, I just have a quick question. Is anyone in the audience familiar with Mark T. Hightower's work?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think I've seen it.
Oh, okay. Okay, you haven't. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that he's passed away. If you want, I could play 2 minutes of him speaking with James Fetzer. Hold on here.
Well, I don't know if you need to do that.
Hold on. Yeah. What's that, Maxwell?
I know I see that you're like putting some effort into debunking nanothermite, and I can also give you some time. But is that what the intent here is?
No, well, I'm starting off. Yeah. Let me finish the whole presentation. I still got some time,
okay.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, you do. I'm just
okay. Just so you know, I studied upon, you know, Mark T. Hightower has some important work for the 9/11 Truth Movement, and he should have been much more published. But I agree.
This is excellent.
Yeah, I'll show you what he has to say here. Let's see. Mark T. Hightower. I think it was up to minute. Just looking.
I Googled him, and he's an NSA researcher.
He may have been scrubbed from a lot of his research information has been scrubbed. Attachment 2. Well, hold on here. Let me find out where.
He still seems to be active, so I don't.
Yeah. He still might have an active member in AE 9/11 Truth. Let's see here. I remember going to which. I think it was minute. You got to go right. Okay, yeah, minute 119. So hold on here. Minute 119.
I think you need to share that application.
Yep. I will. Right here. Hold on. Okay.
Floor 10, and then I have a break, and then I start showing at floor 101 all the way to 110. And basically, I totaled up the TNT required per floor. And again, the assumption is that
I don't think you're sharing the right application or the right browser.
You have to stop share screen and start again.
Oh, okay. Share screen again. Hold on. Share. Let me just go back a little bit here. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to play it.
I couldn't really show the whole spreadsheet, so I cut it kind of in the middle.
See it.
So you see, starting at floor 1 to floor 10, and then I have a break, and then I start showing.
You see a bunch of Harry Potter stuff and Star Wars.
Right.
And basically,
yeah. So I'm just playing his video audio. It's not no, it's just an audio recording. It's not a video.
Oh, okay.
Right. So just he's right now he's in an interview with James Fetzer on his nanothermite challenge. So this is one of the very few audio recordings we have of him. But I just want to play a couple minutes of it so you can hear him. He was a real person talking about his research here. So, okay.
I totaled up the TNT required per floor. And again, the assumption is that you're severing by high explosive means the core columns as well as the perimeter columns. And the lower right is where the totals are. It turns out it's 671 tons of TNT. If you convert that to RDX, it'd be 419 tons of RDX. The next page, page 39, I just sort of blew up that lower right part, which shows the results. But then if you go to page 40, which is where I have the interpretation of these results, keep in mind that this calculation assumed cutting the columns at every floor. The results can easily be adjusted for other cases. For example, if instead they were cut every third floor, you would just divide the results by 3. The explosives necessary for complete pulverization of concrete were not included in the calculation. Horizontal members would also need to be cut, but explosives for this were not included in the calculation. Use of shape charges would decrease the quantity of actual explosive needed by 81%, although the total mass needed would only decrease by 45%, owing to the mass of copper needed in the shape charges. The previous spreadsheet calculations tend to support Neil's Harret's estimate that perhaps 100 tons of conventional explosives were needed. If adjustments were made for those things not included in the calculation, the amount required would probably be in the hundreds of tons. Staggering. And then page 41 and 42, we're kind of shifting gears here, but this is where I'm just showing how when you do a Google search for explosive nanothermite, you'll pull up all kinds of language where, and I'm not going to read all these, exactly totally, but this is examples of the kind of things you'll find. You'll find things like high-tech explosive material, let's see, government-developed explosive nanothermite, high explosive nanothermite, highly explosive nanothermite, high-tech military explosive.
But the fact of the matter is, Mark, is your research has shown that none of these phrases actually is accurate.
Right.
I mean, it's all just generalized bull.
Yeah, there may be by the way, there may be a military grade thermite, and it may even be called super thermite. The textbook I was citing earlier actually points out, uses the word super thermite, but it's super because it reacts so much faster than regular thermite. But it's not super because it's a super high explosive. Okay?
Right, it's not super because it's explosive. It's super because it's fast.
Yes, it's a very fast thermite.
Speedy.
Yeah, but it's not super. It's not a super high.
And it's not going to produce shock waves that are going to be able to demolish steel, which requires 3,000 plus, much less steel, 6,000 plus meters per second.
Right. So anyway, without quoting all those, but then finally going to page 4.
Yeah. So I just I thought I'd stop it there. So let me just read this here. So yeah. So it's important. Oh, hold on. Let me share this screen here. Share screen. Share. Okay. So it's important to note that in order for an explosive to be able to successfully blow up or pulverize a material, its detonation velocity must be greater than the speed of sound in that material. Since the speed of sound in concrete is 3,200 meters per second to 3,600 meters per second, the nanothermite would need to have a detonation velocity of Mach 9.4 to 10.6, not the Mach 3 that 8911 Truth said. Furthermore, to pulverize steel, the explosive material needs to have a detonation velocity of over 6,100 meters per second, or Mach 18. And now there are explosives that do have detonation velocities well over 6,100 meters per second. They are listed in the following Wikipedia link, are classified as high explosives. Octane, I can't really pronounce it, but is the highest chemical explosive of all. It has a detonation velocity of a range of 9,900 to 10,000 meters per second. RDX, a plastic explosive, first used in WW2, has detonation velocity of 8,350 meters per second. Nitroglycerin has a detonation velocity of 7,700 meters per second. And TNT has a detonation velocity of 6,900 meters per second. All four of these substances are rated in the secondary high explosives and have the capabilities of pulverizing concrete and steel. So in conclusion, if I tell someone that nanothermite or superthermite found in WTC dust is a high explosive, and I'm making a false scientific statement, that the definition of primary high explosives are those that create detonation velocities over 2,000 meters per second or greater. So I just thought I'd point that out. This was some of the research that I sent people. So now let's move on to what I want to talk about in Dr. Wood's research.
May I say something, Chris?
Yeah, quickly, sure.
Every day they melt heavy railroad ties with thermite. It melts it. It melts it instantly. Instantly melts.
And I've seen that, and it takes a while for the reaction to take place, and it's 18th century technology.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it melt immediately. It can break a railroad tie.
Yeah. It goes pretty fast, but it's still a chemical reaction, and chemical reactions take time. Let me okay. So now let's move on to what one of the researchers that Dr. Wood references. His name is John Hutchison, and he got a lot of old military surplus equipment, and he started doing some very interesting experiments, and he used very, very high voltages in a static field, and he was able to get this result right here. This is what he was able to do to an iron rod, and I'm gonna play that. Let me hold on. Let me get my screen share here. Okay, screen share. Stop screen share. Start Sheen Square. Right here, share. So this is a solid carbon steel bar measuring 2 inches by 2 inches by 7 inches tall that he put on a table, and he's zapping it with interfering microwaves in a static field. Now let's watch what happens to this rod when we play it.
Good. What the hell? Just pull it out of the test area over there and put some paper on in the hallway here. This used to be oh my mercy. 7 long, just under 2 inch by 2 inch solid block of iron. And this is a small sample that just did some strange stuff, but not as impressive as this thing.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's John Hutchison speaking, okay? And if you go back and look at the rod, I mean, it's absolutely amazing that like 75% of the mass of that iron rod is gone. So where did the mass go? This is a process of molecular dissociation. This is very high advanced technology being shown in front of us that John Hutchison was able to replicate. If you look at it, you can see some of the dust coming off of it. So you see the little smoke. You can see there's smoke coming off the top. But this is a very, very interesting phenomenon. It would be interesting if that dust could penetrate through a brick wall, for example, which I think there's a chance that it could. So and I'll be showing a video where that exactly is happening. So let me stop share screen there, and let me pull up the presentation on Dr. Wood specifically on building dustification. Let me find it here just a second. Just a second, search. Right. There it is.
So I've had solar for about 2 years now. I'm very happy with it.
Well, hold on. Like right here. Just a second. Okay. Got it here. Let me stop screen sharing. Share screen. Justification. Share. This is from the movie Irrefutable. This is which shows Dr. Wood's research in an hour presentation. Let me put some.
10 years you've been looking at this evidence. Can you go?
Harrison.
Where did the towers go?
Where did the towers go?
Where did the buildings go?
Where did the towers go? 10 years you've been looking at this evidence, and you've pinned it down and pinned it down, and where'd it go?
Dust. Gone with the wind.
We're talking about the fact that most people see what they expect to see, what they want to see, what they've been told to see, what conventional wisdom tells them to see, not what is right in front of them in its pristine condition.
They didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground, but turned into dust in midair.
Although they were demolished in such a way as to look as if they fell, they did not fall at all.
The buildings, in fact, mostly turned to dust before they hit the ground. You see the steel falling in midair, trailing dust. It's not hitting anything as it's flying through the air. So why is it turning to powder in midair? It's not pulverization. It's not vaporization. I call it dustification. The buildings turn to dust.
Yeah, I just want to stop it right there real quick and show you guys an example of the beam right here. You see that's a solid beam where my pointer is, and then as it moves down, it's no more a solid. It's no more a solid beam. It just turns to dust in a few seconds. So, but we'll keep on continuing.
How could so much steel and concrete just vaporize? Did it all turn to dust?
It's incomprehensible for somebody to see something solid turn into dust.
The buildings turn to dust in midair. If you look at it, you can see that.
Could you pause that for a second, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
So I was gonna point out, I mean, you pointed to that blob coming down.
Yeah.
And you said it turned to dust.
Yes.
So a bunch of dust went around it, but a fraction of a second later, you could actually see that there's still a solid object in there in the dust. I mean, it had cleared a little bit. If you want, you can replay it. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll bring some more evidence too. That's one piece of it, and but just let me keep on going here. Okay, hold on with this presentation. Yeah.
It's not playing.
It is. It's just going a little slow. Give it some time.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back.
You have a steel beam flying through the air, and it's dissolving as it flies through the air, turning to dust, and it's not hitting anything. The building was not smashed to bits. So that's why pulverizing doesn't describe it.
No explosions, no heat, no flames.
Vaporization implies high heat. You would have seen the whole building glowing. People would have been blinded by the light. It's very dense dust. It initially blocked out all of the sunlight, 100% of the sunlight, so it was pitch black. You come to the realization that these pieces of material are becoming dust. They're frothing up into dust as they fall.
And if you watch some of these pieces, you can actually see them turning to dust before they hit the ground.
It turns to dust.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I mean, just like a Star Trek thing. It just, boom, it's gone.
What we saw and what happened on 9/11 was something that we as the public had never seen before.
What happened on 9/11, I believe today, was not controlled demolition, it was not nanothermite, and it certainly was not the pancake effect of two planes hitting a building.
There's a cluster of core columns that remains here. Watch what happens to them. They just faint. There's building 7, which is a 47-story building. It's like 650 feet tall, approximately. This has got to be over that.
It physically disintegrates in front of your eyes, not concrete, but steel.
You can see all of this is frothing up into dust. It's also blowing downward. That's about 700 feet tall. If that thing tipped over, it would take out a few blocks worth of buildings. How's it going to go straight down? You got a 700-foot hole in the ground dropping into? This video is of building 7. Notice there's one face and one face only that has this lather pouring out of it. If that's smoke, why is it one face only from ground to roof?
Yeah, so I want to stop right there. You see, this is the whole back side of building 7, and you just see a whole bunch of dust coming from the backside. And this dust, I believe, is the building being eaten from the inside out, and as part of the psyop, because they needed to have a tremendous amount of smoke, but what they were really using was the dust of the steel from the inside of the building. But let me play it a little bit more.
That does not look like a fire pouring out a window.
Is basically not touched at all. A few little fires. I mean, it was weird. It was bizarre.
It blew out of one face of the building only, from bottom to top.
Yeah, so also the entire one face of the Twin Towers, dust was appearing right through that face, like it was magically going through the face of the building. And let me just stop right there. And I'm going to play this other research video that I don't think any of you guys have seen. I'm going to stop sharing. Hold on. Let me play this other video. This is a, whoops, I don't want to turn on my, I want to play it with QuickTime. Okay. So let me do a screen share. Share. Okay, so I found this video on Matthew Noss's research site, And this person from Brazil says, "Hi people, someone shared here in Brazil a video made by a mainstream media channel here about 9/11. What came to my attention is very strange pattern of smoke coming out the building that I never saw before. Let's have a look at second 59. So let me go through. I'll play the whole thing. I don't think there's any audio. So you can see that's in Portuguese. Here. You can see the dust coming from like one side of the building. Now here the firemen talking about the explosions, but then it jumps to this right here. Wow. I'm going to pause that. I'm going to go back. So right prior to the building, so right here, you see a cloud of dust magically going right through the building wall. And that cloud of dust has peaks and valleys like a wave, okay? And I wouldn't be surprised if the directed energy weapon that they put inside the building were placed in the same pattern as the wave, okay? See the peak of that, and it just magically goes right through the wall of the building. So do you guys know of any technology that can put dust through a wall of a building?
I think that mischaracterizes what we're seeing.
Well, what do you think? What do you see? What do you see, Maxwell?
So what we need to consider here is that not in this particular clip, I don't know which building this is, but in the other one.
Yeah, this is the Twin Towers. Yep.
World Trade Center, just a second. World Trade Center 2 had already fallen, and at the same time that it fell, it took out World Trade Center 4. I should say they had devices in World Trade Center 4 that decified. So when Jody Wood says that, oh, you can see this, the energetic, that is actually World Trade Center 4 going up in smoke. And if you look at the prevailing wind direction there, it's going across the sides of the building. So any smoke or dust coming up from the ground would go up the face of the tower that did not have the wind blowing across it.
But I'm just saying what I see, what my eyes see, I see a wave of dust magically going through the face of that World Trade Center building. And this was
what I see is dust going across.
Anybody else? Yep.
Yes, Chris, look at the smoke. That is coming out of the building, because if you look at it with the smoke coming out of the building up above, and that piece is also coming out of the building. It's not going in.
It is correct that there is smoke coming from above, and I also have some good pictures of that. Let me.
Hold on. Play it.
Guys. What you guys can.
Chris finish his presentation. If you have questions, make a little note to yourself, and we'll come to it at the end. But please keep yourself muted until Chris has finished his presentation. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, let me. I want to show you this other share screen. Hold on here. Whoops. Just a second. Share screen. This one right here. So this is a picture of the dust coming out of the top of the tower. But you notice that pattern. It's a wave pattern. Everybody see that? It's a wave pattern. So I believe that dust is actually building material, and it's just coming out of the side in a wave pattern, and that's a phenomenon of the directed energy weapon. And so let me. So I just thought I'd show you guys. I really think that's an amazing video there, where that it was captured coming right from the side of the building. Just as the Hutchison effect showed the building. Now, it also my contention is that building 7 was being also eaten from the inside out, because you could see the dust coming on the wall of building 7. So hold on, stop screen. Let me do another share screen. I'll go back to the here. Share. Is that the right one? You got, do you guys
These windows are broken.
You guys see building 7 right now? Am I sharing the right screen?
Yes.
Okay, good.
If it was smoke from a fire and it really needed to get out, why isn't it coming out these windows? If there's a traffic jam, why does it take the path of least resistance? These.
Hold on. Okay.
These windows are broken. If it was smoke from a fire and it really needed to get out, why isn't it coming out these windows? If there's a traffic jam, why does it take the path of least resistance? Notice it's spiraling around. And the wind that day was only like 7-8 miles per hour.
So this right here, in my contention, is building 7 being eaten from the inside out by directed energy weapons. And you see all that dust and smoke just coming from one side, and you see just a little bit of fire. So let me keep on playing it.
It's not pushing out, it's being sucked out, it looks like. And that poured out of the building all afternoon for 7 hours.
So that's one whole face of building 7, and all that. I mean, did you see how much dust and smoke is right there? I mean, that, you know, that's not a dozen pieces of office furniture burning. That huge smoke cloud coming just out of that face of building 7. You guys can all see that. So let me keep on playing.
That's a lot of material.
So basically it was disintegrating from the inside.
By 5:20 p.m., there wasn't enough mass left to slam to the ground.
The walls were like an empty shell.
I wonder how many people out there listening to us right now are just dumbfounded, looking at each other.
Here was these huge buildings that turned to dust in midair right in front of our faces on TV. Why did so few people see that? Because they were told to see a collapse, maybe?
It does not fall within their learned parameters. Conventional wisdom kicks in, and it says that it's impossible to dustify a building.
The buildings turn to dust before they even reach the ground. You can actually see this happening. You can watch any of the videos from the news channels. They all show the same thing.
We thought we knew what we saw.
A plane hitting the building should not turn the buildings into dust.
We've got to start looking at this whole situation a lot differently than we have up until now.
Free your mind.
They just seem to crumble.
This is not a theory, and it is not speculation.
The proof is staring us right in our face.
Can you call that a collapse? The building didn't burn up nor did it slam to the ground, but turned into dust in midair.
The 110-story tower disintegrated in just 10 seconds.
It doesn't look like a controlled demolition or a pancake effect. It looks more like a total pulverization. And it just seems like it's like a waterfall effect where it's just dust is just accumulating and piling over on each other.
That's not a collapse. And it's not an explosion. It's a building frothing up into powder.
This is 110 stories of building turning to dust in 10 seconds. it just seems to turn into dust.
The towers did not collapse.
They did not collapse. They were turned to dust.
The towers were not brought down, but instead were turned into dust.
We don't have a word in our vocabulary that describes that. So I've invented a new word, dustification. I kind of define it as the process of turning a solid structure into powder in midair.
Dustified.
There it goes. Wait a minute, that building's turning into dust in midair. Collapses don't do that.
The towers turned to dust. They turned to dust before they hit the ground, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay, so yeah. So does everyone think that video is interesting? I don't know how many people have seen that video, but it certainly is very interesting to me.
It is, but she mischaracterizes the physics of it.
Okay, well, we'll get onto that a little later there, Maxwell. I'm almost finished up, so I'll definitely take your question. I was going to show just a couple more attachments here, like some of my own supplementary research. So let me start share screen. So right here is one of the melted cars at the base of the Twin Towers, and this is image 153 from Dr. Judy Wood's website, and one of the 1,400 toasted cars at the WTC site right after 9/11. So the residual effects of the directed energy weapons had an effect on the cars where they started to warp, and then molecular disassociate. And if you look at there's a wheel right underneath the car. You notice the wheel has folded in, and identified the car as a 1992 Buick. So in order for that wheel to fold in, those bolts would have had to become very weak, and I said the wheel falls off because the bolts holding the rear wheel hub bearing to the axle beam are somehow compromised. And then, which is a better explanation? Option one in their website, A911 True states partially unignited nanothermite falling through the air as it continues to react would have produced molten iron droplets. A still reacting thermite mixture drifting on down onto the car, and the dust plumes could easily account for the singeing of the car paint and even igniting the cars. However, in this case, the nanothermite droplets of molten metal bounced under the car, avoiding the newspaper, and landed on the head of the bolts. The bolts heated up to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, causing them to lose 95% of their tensile strength, and they gave way, causing the wheel to fold under. Or option two, directed energy weapon technology that was used to molecular disassociate the Twin Towers had a residual effect of damaging approximately 1,400 cars located at ground level. The DEW effect of the molecular bonds in the steel bolts holding the rear wheel hub bearing to the car's frame, then the bolts gave way. So you see that there's paper like right underneath that wheel. So obviously if the thermite got underneath there and melted the car, I'd find a hard time believing that one. Let me go on to just a couple more, and then I'll wrap my presentation up here. This attachment here, let me do screen share. Share screen. So this is a picture of a beam, an unusually shaped steel beam inside the Bankers Trust building at the 15th floor. The Bankers Trust building was located right next to the Twin Towers, was damaged by some falling debris. And incidentally, several years later, they had to take the whole building down because if the directed energy weapons compromised the strength of the steel, it had some effect of maybe taking alloying elements out of the steel would be much weaker. But if you look on this steel beam, you can see it looks kind of like a lasagna effect buckling. And this violates, Euler's formula for a pin beam connection, that the beams can only fail in this manner first 3 column buckling modes, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. It's not going to fail in that mode. And then you also see the fresh paint. I remember when I was working for a structural steel fabricator, and I showed this to one of the guys. He looked at it. He was just very shocked and had a really bad day the whole day. He was very silent. I think it clicked on him. So that was one. So this is just more evidence that the steel actually jellified. Let me just give you one more here. Let's see here. Yeah, let me pull up this one, and then screen sharing, share screen. So if you want to see evidence for your own with your own eyes, the effects of the directed energy weapon, you go right down to the 9/11 museum, and they have on display. This is a chunk of steel embedded into a Bible. The steel got into a jellified state, just like we see in John Hutchinson. And there's a piece of steel like dripping over the front of the Bible. And paper burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. Steel melts at 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's no way that this steel was hot. And Jesse Ventura is former governor. He did a show on Dr. Wood that you guys should all watch on his conspiracy theories. And then he's a big supporter of this technology. He was able to see it because he's a Navy SEAL, so he knows what things look like when they blow up. But I remember he commented to Alex Jones. He says, "Well, did the steel melt because it was hot?" And Alex Jones wasn't able to answer him. There was, when I'm scrolling down, you can see some more pictures of this is steel just right over the page of the Bible. There was also a painting found there. There was a hold on here. Okay, let me read this. It says, very much related to this anomaly artifact in the 9/11 museum is another one found in the ruins of an almost forgotten and seldom mentioned building, which was immediately destroyed on the morning of 9/11. The St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church across the street from the south side of the South Tower, or WTC2, when retrieval of the relics in the church were undertaken. In the following days, only a few pieces survived, and one find was called a miracle. The great miracle was the recovery of the icon of Saint Spiridon. The silver around the icon had melted, but the paper icon had not burnt. So what technology can melt silver and keep the paper intact? And this discovery was one of the church's most holy relics and was declared a miracle because the silver onlay applied to a paper of icon Saint Spiridon had burnt off, leaving the paper intact and scorched the melting point of silver 1,763 degrees Fahrenheit. So will Pope Francis also, like this Greek Orthodox Archbishop Demetrius, declare the Bible paper fused to this steel artifact a holy relic and now a miracle? Or will he assign responsibility to the science, or would he rather the unknown science of directed energy technology remain unknown and suppress? Probably the best collection of evidence making the case for directed energy technology at work and used as a weapon on 9/11 can be found at the website of a mechanical engineer named Dr. Judy Wood, PhD, and her landmark book, Where the Towers Go. And by the way, I do feel that Dr. Judy Wood is the most qualified to research this because of her advanced PhD in materials. She was able to see a lot of stuff that the average scientist wasn't able to see. So I conclude my presentation. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Yep.
Well, since I first saw Dr. Judy Wood's presentation, I knew that directed energy weapons and microwaves are used on 9/11 because of the 1,400 cars with their engine blocks melted.
Yep.
The big hunk of steel will melt under a directed energy weapon or a very strong microwave, whereas paper doesn't. It's just like you put a ball of tinfoil into a microwave oven and it'll catch fire until it uses up all the oxygen in the microwave. But I still believe strongly that thermite was used, barometric bombs were used, and possibly mini nukes to do the whole thing. And that would be I was in the military and I studied explosives, and the general attitude is to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, into an attack like that. So they would use anything they had.
But what do you think the main mechanism is there, John?
Well, I can't say which one is better than the other, but they're all used. They were all used. And the thing is that we need to get it out that 9/11 was an inside job, because the American public is clueless. And I just use an example. I've been talking to my family about what's happening in Gaza, and they all repeat Netanyahu's story, the 40 beheaded babies, the massive rapes. They repeat what Netanyahu says because Netanyahu is speaking, he's creating a narrative, and he's covered on virtually every commercial and public network. And that's what people, friends and relatives of mine, they all believe the story that Netanyahu is putting out, and they get very angry. Yeah, I say, could you look at the gray zone? They seem to have proven that there were no rapes, and no, they're not going to look at it because they just get angry. There's so much taken by the narrative, and I think we need to concentrate on that, not whether directed energy is more important than thermite or barometric bombs or mini nukes or whatever. They were definitely, those towers definitely brought down by men, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd like to add is that, and that Hutchison experiment, he used very low, I think he used 150 watts to melt that rod, which shows that there's breakthrough energy technologies. Like if you can use the same technology to on water, if you can split the water molecule, we can all have cars running just on water, and there's implications of free energy with this technology. So if this technology exists, the world needs to know about it, and they need to come forward with it, and so to get us all off of fossil fuels and high cost of energy. And I think that's going to happen in the future. So any other questions? Alfred.
Yeah, my question to you is, where was the directed energy weapon machine placed? And what was it on each floor? Where was it coming from?
Let me address that. So Dr. Wood's research is incomplete, and we still need to find this stuff out. I think by showing that wave video that you could say that possibly they were placed in like every 5th floor, and there was a gentleman by the name of Dick Allgaier who actually remote viewed this, and he said that these contraptions were the size of a fire extinguisher. And so if you could put like a dozen of these things on every 5th floor, the size of a fire extinguisher, maybe you could have the effect. But the research is incomplete. Researchers need to step up and could probably find these answers. I do feel that when the Spire was coming down, that it was being hit by a space-based directed energy weapon. And 107 actually goes on record that we parked satellites 24,000 feet up in orbit that can shoot down interfering microwaves. He says it, and I can forward anyone that video of him saying it. He may not like that he said it, because I know that he has confident NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, where in some subjects he'll kind of not want to talk about it and kind of move on. But to answer your question, the more research needs to be done on this, Al, and it's unfortunate that it's taken us so long for researchers to step up the table, because I do feel the truth is very important on 9/11. That's why I originally joined the group, was to find the truth. I know the activism is very important also.
So would this directed energy weapon show any trail of sort of like a beam coming down from the sky? What signature is?
I believe it was a different classification than the ones used in La Hyena and forest fire. I believe that those ones targeted electromagnetic conductors and would heat them up, like the ones used in the California wildfires. There's a video of wooden posts on the side of a road. All of the wooden posts are burning, but the trees around the wooden posts are perfectly intact. But each of the wooden posts holding up the guardrail has about 10 pounds of fasteners in it, which are considered electromagnetic conductors. So when a different type of directed energy weapon that were used in the California fires would target electromagnetic conductors, heat them up, everything around it would burn. There's a really good researcher that shows that a tire with steel cords in it would be melted, but a tire with polyurethane cords would not, because the polyurethane cords were not electromagnetic conductor. But there are different classifications of directed energy weapons, and the ones used, the Twin Tower is its own unique classification, that to just make something simply turn to dust.
So you would contend that there was something from space that was
yeah, because there's holes in the ground. If you look at the holes, like, building 6 had a perfectly round hole, like it would just scallop from the inside. So if 107 is correct and you can shoot down a microwave from outer space, you can molecular dissociate anything you want. And I wouldn't be surprised if Space Force has that technology. They can use it on our adversaries. But
wouldn't it take a tremendous amount of energy, some form to create that?
No, because I show in the Hutchison effect of the steel rod. The steel rod was melting under, and I can talk to Andrew Johnson, but the same amount of energy used in a light bulb was able to melt that steel rod. So for what they're doing is they're resonating the molecules and breaking up the molecular bonds. I mean, all it is breaking up the molecular bonds. And you can do that through waves and vibration. Like if you look at the Tacoma Bridge, the whole bridge came down just because the wind was blowing at the right frequency. And and then Nikola Tesla did a lot of experiments like that too. But it's just technology that it can be used for the betterment of mankind and not for the destructive part. But I believe it was both inside and top. Now I could be wrong. There could be a researcher come out to give better research. I'd love to take a look at it, but yeah, I would like to figure this out before I die.
Well, for the average Joe, it's beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
I think it, when you're trying to convince people of 9/11 and
yes,
and what happened, this is something that is way beyond what anybody could possibly. I mean, they think you were out of your freaking mind.
I absolutely agree with you, Al, and that's why I don't advise waking up a normie with this type of research. You stick to the simple things with a normie. If they still think Bin Laden did it, you're just absolutely shooting yourself in the foot trying to talk to them. You'll actually solidify the fact that you're a nut job when you're talking about this. And I agree, and that's why we should break our website up into different tabs for different truthers at different stages of their development. But people that want to wake up, and then some people become very interested in the research, and if they are, let's give them a platform so they can learn more about the research. And let's not suppress all this research. The research is important because that leads to the truth.
Well, I appreciate you sticking with it and your willingness to take the heat that comes from it.
Oh yeah.
So Maxwell has his hand raised.
Sure, Maxwell. What's your question, sir?
Well, it's not so much a question, it's more of a statement. So I'm in the Duke camp as well.
Yeah.
But I say that mine were nuclear powered and they emitted nuclear output, highly energetic neutrons. Now, I want to say, first of all, that you were right on the money with the high tower stuff about, hey, if they used, if nanothermite was involved, it would need to be much more vibrant. And of course, even Dr. Jones mentioned, well, it would have to mix with RDX. But those velocities there those chemical explosives would initiate would be very loud. So another piece of evidence there that debunks nanothermite or the super duper nanothermite is that it wasn't loud. There's plenty of audio evidence And even Dr. Sunder from NIST said that, hey, you know, man, he was just talking about World Trade Center 7. He said, hey, to take out that column 47, you would need, you know, so much TNT or whatever, you know, chemical bases, and it would be deafening within, you know, half a mile. And that deafness and hard of hearing was not one of the ailments of, you know, the survivors there. So I'm on page there, but Dr. Wood has mistakes in her stuff. I mean, she presents evidence. That was her purpose in life, was to present anomalous evidence. But one of her strengths, and you know, when I go into discussions with people that really support Dr. Wood, you know, they even proclaim as one of their talking points that she has no conclusion. She just have a bunch of evidence. You know, whatever theory du jour of 9/11 you want to come up with has to address that evidence. That's where, you know, my premise that I presented a few weeks ago, that's what it does. It stands on the evidence that she presented and takes it to the next level. And you even said yourself that it's incomplete. It needs more effort. And I've been through Dr. Wood's website and her book, you know, front to back several times, and I found areas where she was just wrong. And you showed videos there. They were a great example. So think of the tower as a wing, and you got wind coming against it. You can see the direction of the wind going, you know, because of the smoke at the top of the tower. Well, that wind, when it hit, you know, the windward side, would go around then the two adjacent sides, and then there would be not a vacuum, but a void, so to speak, on the non-wind side where smoke would accumulate. And we need to take into consideration that when World Trade Center 2 came down, that was the first tower that collapsed. At the exact moment that it came down or hit the ground, that's when World Trade Center 6 and World Trade Center 5 had their innards zapped. And that stuff, that's content, is the dust cloud and the smoke that comes up. And because of the wind direction, it ends up going the side of World Trade Center 7. It looks like it might be coming from within World Trade Center 7, but it really wasn't. It was already on the ground level and just coming up. That's just where the wind and the other buildings, you know, channeled it. So, I mean, that's one mistake. Another mistake is when the stuff is falling out of the building, she implies that the wall assemblies were dustified. They weren't. They were well represented in the debris pile. What wasn't represented well was the concrete floors, the concrete pans, and the metal pans and the metal trusses that supported those floors, all of the office content. That stuff was gone. And even the inner core, we see that spire. That spire proves that it was there. And another error that she makes is that she only shows that spire collapsing from one direction and says, oh, it turns to dust. Well, that was more anomaly of the video camera than anything else, because from other directions, you can actually see, also an event happened, but it didn't dustify it. That spire kind of telescoped in on itself and fell to the ground. From other perspectives, you can see it doing that. But she mischaracterizes and says, oh, see, that steel is being dustified right there. And really, it wasn't. I mean, she has many mistakes like that. My premise was that multiple fourth generation, you know, exotic nuclear weapons were used. And for the main action, it was, you know, like 80% of its nuclear yield, which was already tactical, was highly energetic neutrons aimed upwards in a cone shape. And they were mounted like near the inner core. But they had side effects. But something that messed me up until I really started looking deeper into like Norman's work was World Trade Center 4, World Trade Center 5, and World Trade Center 6, because they were timed to be destroyed at when the normal dust cloud or the normal debris would have fallen to the ground. And a lot of times we say, oh, you know, or Dr. Woods says, oh, that's the dust bouncing off the ground and coming up. No, it was fresh dust from those buildings that need an explanation. Now, the reason, though, that I discount beams from above, other than the fact that Dr. Wood did not provide thorough research into she didn't do that into nuclear devices. I mean, it's a major stumbling block, and that's what saved her life, probably. I mean, her job was just to present the evidence. But at any rate, there was a bank vaults underneath World Trade Center 4, and there were also vaults underneath World Trade Center 6. Now, when we have evidence that they were robbing World Trade Center 4, and we have evidence that the vault under World Trade Center 6 was emptied prior to the event. The problem with a beam from above scenario is that it's going at the speed of light. And how do you turn it off so that it doesn't go below street level and into the vaults that you are robbing? I mean, that's very difficult to do. But as you were kind of saying in your presentation, you say devices were already in the buildings. It wasn't a beam from afar or a dew from afar. It was things that were already in the buildings and detonated. And that makes more sense. But okay, I think I probably had my say here, but I wanted to say that, you know, we see there with the description that Dr. Wood has, oh, World Trade Center 7 is frothing up. That isn't what's happening at all, because of the other building destruction that was down below. And Hutchinson, by the way, I don't see, I mean, his little experiment, I didn't see a lot of evidence that matched that. And that Bible that you showed, I think that, my nuclear devices had side effects. You know, one of them was an EMP, and I think it was the EMP, particularly from like World Trade Center 4 and World Trade Center 5 and 6, where they had devices near the ground level. That is what snuck out and you know, created eddy currents. Yeah, because there was nothing, there were no wall assemblies or things like that to do a Faraday cage for those EMPs when you're at the ground level. That was all like glass mostly. So that's how it sneaked out and generated eddy currents in the cars and got them torched. I don't think it was a device radiating it there, but like a misaimed device could have problems. And you brought up Bankers Trust building. That could have been a misaimed device. I mean, it wasn't a perfect operation. But I guess my point here is that Dr. Wood is great, but she does not have a conclusion. Therefore, you need to be on the lookout for something that does address her evidence and takes things to the next level. And that's my point here, is that I think that what Dr. Andre Gaspaner put together with his 4th generation nuclear devices, even though he doesn't talk about 9/11, he's talking about, hey, this is where that technology is, and this is how, and I take it to the next level and say, well, hey, this is how it could be implemented. All right, so that's what I say. Thank you for letting me talk.
So Maxwell, are you familiar with the bomb that went off in the port of Beirut, Lebanon? Did you see any videos on that?
I don't.
This was a few years ago. I think 2020, port of Lebanon. If you want, I'll show you a quick video on that one here.
Well, why are you bringing it up?
Well, I just want to show it because you advocate nuclear or 4th generation nuclear, but I would just want to show a quick video of this bomb going off in the port of Lebanon. Hold on here. Let me share it, and then let's play it here. See, that's what that's a demonstration of nuclear technology right there, in my opinion.
I agree, but it's a different type of technology than what I'm proposing. I mean, there's a wide spectrum of potential nuclear devices. I agree
that's above ground.
Yep, that's above ground, but I do believe that that's a mini nuke going off. I mean, I might be wrong,
but
I agree, but those aren't the devices
nuclear
that I'm talking about.
technology also involves below ground, which has quite a different effect.
Well, you have
that's true, but it depends on the device, Susan. I mean, it depends on what is the design goal of the device. The initial devices were a large blast wave, and that's what we're seeing there, a large blast wave. In the device I'm talking about, the goal is emitting highly energetic neutrons in a targeted fashion. So thanks for letting me talk.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I went on and on.
Well, I guess the contention, see, I'm of the firm belief that the process was neither kinetic nor thermal. So if you can show me some type of nuclear technologies that's not kinetic and not thermal, then I would say, you know,
I already did that in my presentation. The point
Okay.
there that it's a different type of device. It's a hybrid fission fusion. And by the way, the dust shows evidence of fusion and no, sorry, has evidence of fission, and Dr. Woods doesn't even mention that. She kind of glosses over it.
Well,
let me finish. She also presents, you know, there's evidence in the water samples of tritium, which is evidence of fusion. So in these hybrid devices, which is like neutron devices, but instead of letting the neutrons go in a sphere, it does it in a targeted fashion like a cone. Those could affect
Yep, she does say that the process was electrogravitational and nuclear, electrogravitic and nuclear. So I do believe that there were some reactions, some like nuclear reactions in the residue.
Well, she was going off on her book goes. She drops a lot of dangling innuendo about a lot of concepts that we should keep our eye on, that we should have our radar on, but she doesn't connect any dots. Okay, what I'm saying is I have a premise that connects the dots.
Yeah, I disagree. She comes to.
Well, you haven't even listen. You were at my presentation, but I didn't take notes. You can go read it again or watch the presentation.
I will, and I also challenge you to show me some other people that back up your research.
I have Dr. Andre Gaspaner. It's a peer
a video, scientist. Right? But did you have a video of him talking about it?
I don't need a video of him talking, and that's a bogus argument, because he's a nuclear scientist in Switzerland. He's written more papers in like 3 or 4 different languages, you know, on nuclear topics than a lot of people. And he published something at a time when Dr. Jones could have found it and Dr. Wood could have found it if they had done any research into nuclear weapons. Dr. Wood also missed Dr. Doug's what was it? Beamer, who had an article, a book on DEW technology, and but he was talking more along electromagnetic stuff.
Yeah.
At any rate, Dr. Andre Swan doesn't need any videos. He has a paper that talks about it, and all just like you have to stand on Dr. Wood's shoulders, you need to stand on Dr. Gaspaner's shoulders, because every nuclear scientist had a non-disclosure agreement. That's why they have never been involved in any of these discussions, except for Dr. Jones. And the only reason he got off the hook was because he wasn't talking about anything exotic, anything 4th generation. He was talking old school nukes, trying to mislead the movement, because then he was presenting nanothermite, which you have now thoroughly debunked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, anyways, Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister of Canada, is a big supporter of Dr. Judy Wood, and he goes on record. He shows the video. He talks about it. He writes about her in a book. He's also an aerospace engineer like myself. So, you know, it's important that you know he is supporting her work, and he does have a lot of you know, power behind his name. He's a very accomplished person. So that's one example. But you know, you're welcome to send me your research, and I'll take a look at it again. I mean, I could be wrong, but this is my
we've exchanged emails
right now. Yep.
We've exchanged emails, right? I've already sent you the information. I think you just haven't reviewed it thoroughly.
Well, I've been very busy, sir. So I will spend some time take a look at it again.
And it's not very long. And I've submitted a 2,000 word version of it to the International Center for 9/11 Justice or whatever. And
it would help to have some more. I mean, with Dr. Judy Wood's work, I can think of dozens of people that I could bring on are very, very supportive and would back it up. You know, everywhere, you know, Andrew Johnson, you know, Mark Conlon, Richard Hall from the UK has hosted her several times on his Rich Planet Net TV show. You like to say Jesse Ventura. And I don't know if you watched that movie with Jesse Ventura's Death Ray, but it's really revealing, because when he interviewed Fred Bell, like a couple of days after he interviewed Fred Bell, who is a NASA scientist, to talk about directed energy weapons, Fred Bell mysteriously has a heart attack and dies. So, and one of the people on our show had to quit because she was so scared.
You don't hear about Judy Wood or Stephen Jones, or they all seem to have pulled back, and they must have gotten threats.
I believe Dr. Wood. I mean, I did try to ask her to come on through Andrew Johnson, but I mean, if she wants to be retired and be reclusive, that's up to her. Her work's already done. She's contributed greatly to the 9/11 Truth Movement. It's just for researchers that support her work, like me and Norman Swainpool and Andrew Johnson, just to come forward and promote it, and so that this is she really is stumbled upon the real truth here. Well, not deliberately through all of her painstakingly research that she's and she's researched this for several years, and then and she's met a lot of obstacles and challenges trying to present this research, because it was not really well received by the truth movement, which is unfortunate. So now that they're actually using directed energy weapons in Lahaina and California wildfires, her work is very important, because the truth has to come out. So, any more questions here? Who else do we have? Sue, you have a question?
Well, Miles Flake has his hand raised, so I want to
Miles
first.
Yep.
Hi, thanks.
Who is sharing
Chris.
the screen right now?
It's just me. This was Paul Hellier's book written. I can stop sharing the screen.
Okay.
There you go. Yep.
All right. Miles, you are on.
Oh, thank you. So I got a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering, graduated in 1982, so a long time ago. However, I do remember very vividly that there's two kinds of deformation. There's plastic deformation where things yield, and there's brittle deformation where things snap. So if I have an icicle, a long tube of ice, and I applied load, it will snap. Ice is brittle. Now, if I have the same tube of steel and I apply loads on each end, it's going to deform plastically. It will yield. So we have 3 structures in New York, which for the lay person listening, I think everybody can understand that those collapsed in like a brittle fashion. They just came down, snap almost, right? And yet, when I go back to my engineering design courses with steel design, the structure is built with enough steel, and the connections are also so designed so that things will yield in a slow manner and bend and twist and deform and absorb energy. So question is to everybody else who's engineering related here, do we spend too much time trying to get over to, well, what was this outside energy that had to be applied to make those structures collapse in a global brittle fashion, as opposed to just emphasizing to people, hey folks, these structures should have just deformed and tipped and twisted and bent, and nothing should have just piled down. So in other words, do we not go too far with trying to figure out whether it's directed energy weapon, nanothermite, nuclear, or microwaves and such? Over to you.
Well, I believe that the directed energy weapons had what happened is the material went through a molecular dissociation process, which turned to dust. So this is new technology. If
right, I appreciate that, and I think there's something there to explore, and I don't deny directed energy dissociation, but for the lay person and for the man on the street and the woman on the street, we should just be telling them, hey folks, believe your eyes. These buildings don't collapse like this, so we need a new investigation. We're being deceived. This has not been properly researched as to what caused these bizarre collapses where you don't ever see anything happening like that.
So when I'm out in public outreach, like the last event I was at, I talked about the Leroy Hulsey Building 7 study where he proved that, NIST is wrong, and that the only way for Building 7 to come down the way it did was through controlled demolition. And then that wakes people up, and then they start researching, and then they realize the official story is false. You might run across some individuals that are engineers and mechanics and really want to try to figure out what's happening, and they're interested in the research. So they'll go to our advanced research tab and figure it out. But probably the majority of the people aren't as interested in this. But I just happen to be an engineer, a rocket scientist, so I am.
And I appreciate everybody's work here for taking it to the next step, because yes, indeed, there's a whole bunch of stuff obviously is going on since the last nuclear blasts occurred in the 60s, or at least the open air nuclear explosions. And there's been people obviously researching for decades since the Manhattan Project into new fangled ways of creating energy. And there's now even nuclear propulsion missiles. So I totally support what you're doing. It's just to get a mass movement to wake people up.
Yeah, this is all black research. Yeah, since they dropped their first nuclear bomb, 70 years ago. Does everyone think they came up with some more interesting technology? Sure they have, but they're just not sharing it. But when they use it on us, I think that when they kill 3,000 people with it, I think you can disclose it now. And then if they're covering up for free energy, you can disclose that too to wake people up to this important truth. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
I would like to address the Beirut explosion. I've seen a number of those ammonium nitrate demonstration explosions, and if you're standing like 200 feet away from it, you won't be injured unless the big orange flame and black smoke comes out to get like a gasoline explosion, kind of.
Yeah.
So people were a mile away from that explosion, and they had all their windows broken, and they were, thrown against walls and seriously injured. Yeah. And that wouldn't happen with ammonium nitrate.
I agree. That definitely looks like a mini nuke. That's what a mini nuke looks like. So, but they might have some other technology, as Maxwell's talking about. But if I'd like to actually see his technology. So it worked too.
But the media went on and on and on about that too, saying, "Oh, it's a fertilizer bomb. It's a fertilizer bomb." And I actually had videos at the time showing fertilizer bombs going off, and they didn't look like that. The original explosion was a fertilizer bomb, but not the big one that went out and got everybody. And but the media would not stop. Every single channel, including NPR, PBS, Fox, etc. They were all going on, and in Beirut too. In Beirut, in Lebanon too. All those channels had been bought up, all those networks, and they were doing the same thing. And they were all saying, it's a fertilizer bomb. It's a fertilizer bomb. It's a fertilizer bomb. Osama bin Laden, and
bullshit.
That's how the media working these days.
Yeah, that's why it's important, for us engineers to really take a look at it. So we have big bullshit detection radars, and they try to, when it comes to the science and engineering about it, we have to find the truth. Yep. Sue, do you have a question there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, more of a comment.
Yeah.
In looking at the videos, I can't believe it. After 22 years, I decided to Google tallest controlled demolitions.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting what comes up in Wikipedia, of all places. The tallest controlled demolition was prior to 9/11 was 984 feet. World Trade Center 2 is 1,362 feet. World Trade Center 1 was 1,028 feet, and they are listed in Wikipedia as controlled demolition.
Well, it looks like the military white hats are having some fun.
Yeah, they are listed in Wikipedia as the 2 tallest controlled demolitions in the world.
Yep.
That wasn't what I expected to find. I wanted to compare controlled demolitions to the videos you shared. And because the previous controlled demolitions are so much shorter, I decided to nix that project. So,
I'm sure you'd find it completely different. A regular conventional controlled demolition looks much different than what happens to the Twin Towers when they were coming down.
But I do want to concur with Jack Bottomley that this was a very elaborate, long thought out project, if you want to call it that, plan. And probably one of the reasons we're failing as 9/11 Truth is we keep wanting to find one thing, just one thing that explains it all. And it's not just one thing. It was multiple devices. That's my feeling, my thought after listening to everyone.
Well,
I'd like to comment if you don't.
Yeah, go ahead, Al. Sure.
Yeah, so for the average guy, you don't have to take it any farther than asking them how a building could collapse in 10 seconds. It's never happened ever. And the science behind it is, there are many possible interpretations, but that to me is the most cogent argument you can possibly make. And as far as the super nanothermite particles, the red-gray chips that were found everywhere in the dust, to dismiss that as irrelevant or to say it's been thoroughly debunked just leaves me in disbelief. I mean, Niels Harris had done his study. They're there, they're undeniable, and they have to be included in any analysis that you might be making. So I just don't buy the idea that they didn't play a part in the destruction.
Well, yeah, but another thing you have to look at, Al, is if you take steel and you turn that into fine particles of dust, you take aluminum, you turn that into fine particles of dust, you have the ingredients for nanothermite.
We're talking super nanothermites.
Well, it would still be super because you've broken down the steel into the smallest pieces. You've atomized it. You very, very small particles, steel, and then the towers were built with aluminum cladding. So you take the aluminum and you break that into very fine particles, and you have the prime ingredients that nanothermite's made out of, because nanothermite's made out of steel and aluminum.
Have you ever reached out to Niels Harris and tried to have a conversation?
We'll try. Maybe Norman and I we can. But just because you found it, I mean, I think it could have been used. It could have been used as a red herring to start off with when it was dripping out of the tower, so people would start looking at that because they didn't.
There was an engineer from Worcester Polytech that did an analysis. And
let's have a debate. Yeah, let's discuss it with him in the future.
He's been around for a long time, and he actually did the experiments on.
Well, the only thing is that if you only look at that research and you don't take the time to look at Dr. Wood's research.
No, I'm not saying.
Yeah, you have to look at everything.
That's
and that's
right.
what I have done. And I challenge all truthers to look at both sides. But
I thought I heard that super nanothermite had been thoroughly debunked. I guess that was Maxwell.
Well, I was trying to debunk its capacity as an ingredient because it doesn't have an explosive capability.
Well, according to Niels Harris it does.
Well, I'd love to talk to him about it, and I'd love to present Mark Hightower's work and show him that, you know, 3 times the speed of sound is not a high explosive. Three times the speed of sound is like 1,100 meters per second. It might sound high, but that's not nearly as high as TNT going at 6,000 meters per second. So it just has a very, you know, just because you found it, it could have had a little bit of effect as a decoy, but certainly not the main mechanism. I mean, I believe the main mechanism.
That would be an interesting argument because.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's not.
And by the way, I think the group has accepted the debate with Hammouk and Norman.
And you, yeah.
From South Africa. Both of them are very strong on their convictions, and that should happen here in the future. So we can see them both, and then you can take a different perspective. But other people too that you've known in the past that are highly professional and really, they have to take a look at it. And like I've changed my opinion once I've gotten. I used to be a big Rebecca Roth supporter, and I'm not as much anymore. You know?
For 110 stories to go to the ground in 10 seconds, we can all agree that can't happen and without some exotic thing going on. I mean, that's a given.
Well, it's instantaneous. Yeah, the directed energy, it has the effect where you flip it on, bang, everything turns to dust instantaneously. It's not like a chemical reaction. It's just
Anyway, are we? We're getting.
Well, I just wondered if anybody. I think Maxwell has one last question there, Maxwell. Right?
I have one short because we have an agenda to get.
We gotta talk about our agenda, so let's keep it quick.
Well, I just wanted to underscore what Chris was saying about NT. I mean, yeah, he took issue with me saying it's been thoroughly debunked, but it's not whether it was found in the dust or not. It's whether it was the primary mechanism. That's what Chris was saying. And when you look at all the evidence, NT can't explain it. And even the audio signature, it can't explain it. The speed necessary to dustify the concrete, NT can explain it. And the people that promote NT have no explanation for World Trade Center 4. Just as an example, theoretically, the towers fell on it and crushed the main edifice, but in reality, the main edifice isn't there, and you only have a few pieces of wall assemblies on it, but not enough to essentially remove at a neat line with the north wing World Trade Center 4. So and why did World Trade Center 4? If you look at videos, you have to study it closely, from different angles and recognize what be cognizant of other buildings. But when you start thinking about World Trade Center 5 and looking at the various videos, and 5 and 6 and 4, all three of those, if you have that in mind when you see the destruction, you realize that, hey, that is the point where they were destroyed. When there's this new fresh dust cloud that is coming up, that building is being destroyed. It's being gutted. There's a big crater in World Trade Center 6, etc. Well, NT does not explain that, how this dust cloud came about and how those buildings got gutted. And that is part of the disinformation that was foisted on it. NT was only found in the dust samples of Dr. Jones. They weren't found in the USGS dust samples. It wasn't found in Paul Loy, and there's another report that analyzed the dust. They didn't talk about that, but they did talk about uranium and all of its decay elements. They did have a fraudulent report on tritium, so the signature is already there. So thank you for giving me time.
It's not a matter of one or the other. They're all together, and it's stupid to say, well, I think this one did it better than the kitchen sink. Throw everything against it, including the kitchen sink. And it doesn't matter. Maybe it was the kitchen sink that finally won the battle, but it doesn't matter because we're just trying to prove that there was a battle. And the other thing that we've got to consider is, imagine these people who planned bringing down World Trade Center. They've been the Oklahoma bombing. I'm not remembering them all. And have killed so many people I'm not saying that it was Israeli people, but that they've got no conscience. They've got no empathy. I was married to someone someday. She was very beautiful, but she had no empathy. She could run you over, and she wouldn't think a thing about it, and be laughing and not call the police or anything. These people that did 9/11 have no empathy, and that's something to keep in mind. Thank you.
So, Chris, are you wrapping up here?
Yeah, I pretty much wrapped up. I think we should conclude here. It's 8:30, so.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah, Maxwell, if you have any more questions, you can email me. I'm very busy right now, but I'll have some time in the future months to look at some of your stuff there. So don't. Yeah, I just happen to be very busy in my projects.
Thank you for having done your presentation, Chris. I think it's
welcome. Thank
well
you.
worth hearing.
Yep.
Very well done. Thank you. Yeah. And I just wanted to mention that Maxwell's video is up on Boston 9/11 Truth, and I put the link in the chat. So I think this has been a very productive discussion.
Okay, and Sue, in a couple of weeks, we're having Mary Maxwell has agreed to come on our show. So
yeah,
so everybody knows that. That'll be, what's the date on that? Today's the 16th, and that'll be the 30th.
31st, I believe, right?
31st is Friday. 30th is the Thursday.
Oh, okay.
So
good.
Anyway, for those of you that want to stick around, we're going to go through the Boston 9/11 meeting agenda, and you're welcome to